ability to be credible. It no longer has arguments. It can't make arguments. Its arguments have failed. It is unsuccessful in doing so. And so its strategy now is to just bombard everything and be confusing. That's it. That's the strategy of the ruling class, is to just make sure everything is confusing. And that's more or less successful for the ruling class, to just put in as much confusion as possible. And hopefully people will come back into the YouTube, because I just started it back up. But this confusion is useful for the capitalist class, because if you have confusion, if you have turmoil, nobody knows what to do, nobody knows how to act, nobody knows where to go or what to look at. And so you can just continue operating as if everything is completely fine until it genuinely is not. And that's the big concern, is that we saw what happened in Lytton, BC. We saw what occurred there. We saw the flooding that happened in Vancouver, right? We're seeing the flooding that happened in Palestine. We're seeing the events that occurred across the board. Cotton, thanks for coming back, bud. Damn, bruv. Yeah, I know. The CIA, they don't like me. My internet's been pretty fucky recently. I'm not surprised that my YouTube went down, honestly. I'm not surprised that my YouTube went down. Anemone, thanks for coming back. And these climate change concerns are going to get more dramatic and more serious. And the most serious part about it is the response from the ruling class. That in the United States, they've already put in legislation so that if you live on the coasts, they literally can just kick in your door and do what they want, right? And so if you live on the coasts and you are doing and you're just going to experience sea level rise, right? You're going to experience sea level rise if you live on the coasts, and you're going to experience an abandonment of institutions. You're going to experience the corporate culture withdraw from those places because nobody has any money. And you're going to see a general abandonment from the populace, or from the institutions. And that general abandonment was going to be met by people organizing amongst one another and creating what's going to be called gangs. And so the police forces that exist in the United States have made it very clear that their reaction to this is, well, we're going to be able to kick in anybody's door we want, and we're going to be able to destroy anything we want, and we're going to be able to do whatever we want, right? This is the future of America, and this is the future of what's going to happen as these sea level rises continue to go up. Ooh, getting hot and spicy in here. Getting hot and spicy. Ugh. Oh. Ugh. Here we go again, radio. Yeah, I know. The CIA can't stand it. They can't stand that I'm around, and so they got to do everything they can to shut it down, right? Happens at least once a week, where the YouTube decides to just shut off and decides to fail, right? Such is life. Oh, this is an article that I actually wanted to read in full. This is from Fight Back, right? The Marxist voice of labor and youth. Fight Back has been growing in strength. I've been seeing it happen more and more. The title of it is "The Bank of Canada Wants You to Suffer." After bailing out the capitalist system in 2020, we are now faced with record high inflation. In response, the Bank of Canada is pursuing policies to make us all poorer by raising interest rates and provoking a recession. But this so-called cure may be worse than the disease. Lancing the boil. In a strange form of economic chemotherapy, the Bank of Canada believes that we need to accept a bit of pain in the short term to bring down inflation. As if he was lancing a boil and not toying with millions of people's lives, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem explained that we don't want to make this any more difficult than it has to be. He said the central bank's policy of raising interest rates was a bit counterintuitive, and recognize that for most Canadians, their rents are going up, their groceries are more expensive, gasoline is more expensive, and now their borrowing costs are more expensive. Indeed, for most workers who have been struggling with the rising cost of basic goods and services, this policy of raising interest rates seems like a cruel joke. In that same interview, Macklem explained that this policy would slow spending by reducing borrowing and suck money out of the economy through the increased debt payments. Connected to this, the Bank of Canada is also toying with provoking a recession to take demand out of the market, i.e., to make you poorer through layoffs and wage reductions. Indeed, Macklem has stated that as the current low unemployment rate is unsustainable, and therefore the unemployment rate is going to go up. As Derek Holt, the head of capital market economics at Scotiabank, explained, "They will never say it, but I think they're perfectly willing to court recession in the back of their minds," he continued. "I think they are open to it as a necessary evil to combating inflation." The supposedly independent Bank of Canada has also advised businesses to resist wage increases. Macklem, when speaking to the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, a right-wing corporate lobbying group, said, "Don't build that into longer-term contracts. Don't build that into wage contracts." As we have pointed out elsewhere, this argument is based on the nonsensical wage price spiral argument, which conveniently sidesteps the record profits and hundreds of millions showered on corporations to blame workers for the problems of capitalism. This also conveniently avoids the $45 million in bonuses and pay hikes Bank of Canada managers have received over the pandemic. This includes $5.2 million in pay rises in 2021 when inflation was obvious for all to see. But there is a logic behind this callous policy pursued by the Bank of Canada. The capitalists are simply reaping what they have sown from their attempts to avoid the crisis of the system. As the Marxists of Fight Back explained in 2020, government's spending is no permanent solution to the crisis of capitalism and only delays the inevitable, ultimately making the situation worse by adding all sorts of distortions with massive debt. You cannot escape the crisis of capitalism. You can only delay it and make it the inevitable far worse. This is exactly what we are seeing. Indeed, the policies implemented to bail out the system in 2020 have led directly to an inflationary crisis, with the rate of inflation hitting a 40-year high of 8.1% this summer. But this number does not provide a clear picture of what's really going on. Inflation is actually much higher for food, at 14.5%, and even higher for staples like butter, 20%, or pasta, 21%. Inflation is a silent killer, gradually pushing millions of the poorest people to financial ruin. Indeed, 84% of Canadians in an Ipsos poll stated concern about inflation making everyday goods more expensive. This number rises to 92% among young people under the age of 34. Concretely, 17% of households reported eating less food, with this figure rising to 30% among households making less than $60,000 per year. This is cause for great concern for the stewards of Canadian capitalism, who are worried that there could be political ramifications as a result. Macklem recognizes this danger, stating, "It's been a long time since we had high inflation, and we're rediscovering that it corrodes the social fabric." The centerpiece of the Bank of Canada's strategy is an aggressive policy of raising interest rates. Since this summer, the Bank of Canada has raised the base interest rate from 0.25% to 3.75%, the steepest increase on record. And this is far from over. As Macklem has made clear, it will continue to aggressively raise interest rates. Our mandate is price stability. We're a long way from that mandate, the Bank of Canada governor said. Indeed, even after these drastic increases in the interest rate, inflation has only been brought down from 8.1% to 6.9% in October and November. But Macklem and the BOC are playing a dangerous game. While it is true that high inflation corrodes the social fabric, ultimately leading to a political polarization and class struggle, increasing the interest rates does precisely the same thing, but in a different way. Also, while high inflation squeezes the poorest the hardest, high interest rates hurt a wider layer of the population by increasing the cost of their debt. This is now a double-edged sword for many working-class families who are suffering both from higher costs for basic necessities and from rising debt payments. While some people increased their savings during the pandemic, according to Statistics Canada, on average, regardless of a household's demographic or economic characteristic, gains in household wealth acquired over the previous year have been erased. Indeed, just this year, according to the Financial Times, Canadian household wealth fell by nearly $1 trillion. This is the situation in which interest rates are being frantically increased. But what will the result be? While the Canadian economy weathered the last inflationary crisis in the 1980s, this time household debt has increased astronomically. Debt constituted just 50% of household income in 1980, but this has climbed to 177% in 2021 and 185% in 2022, the highest ever recorded, making Canadian households the most indebted of the G7 nations. Household debt amounts to more than 104% of nominal GDP. Of particular importance is mortgage debt, which makes up 2/3 of total debt held by Canadians, amounting to a whopping $2.1 trillion. With rising interest rates, this massive sum of money will become increasingly expensive to maintain. Approximately 30% of all mortgages are what is known as viable rate mortgages. This means that the monthly payments fluctuate with rising interest rates. According to the Bank of Canada, more than 50% of families with variable rate mortgages have already hit their trigger point, which means that they are not paying down any of the principal, but are only paying interest. CTV News published a story in November with a few examples of working class people who have already had their mortgage payments increase by upwards of $1,000 per month since the summer. This does not even get into fixed rate mortgages, many of which will be expiring soon and have to be renegotiated. As has been pointed out by Jim Stanford at the Center for Future Work, this cure pursued by the managers of capitalism may be worse than the disease, as Stanford explains. Medical students are taught to do no harm to their patient. The zealous monetary tightening being pursued by central banks around the world, with the Bank of Canada leading the way, threatens to do exactly that. The global interest rate shock is pushing economies around the world to the edge of recession, and some financial institutions to the breaking point, and the damage has only just begun. Even rate hikes already in place will cause greater damage in coming months. Indeed, the result of these drastic interest rate increases are already having the effect of rapidly increasing inequality. Already, Canadian workers' share of GDP has fallen by 2% since COVID-19 hit, which amounts to $3,000 each year per worker. On the other end, the share of corporations increased by 5 percentage points. Macklem's policies will only serve to increase this gap and worsen inequality. On the economic front, the Canadian employment declined by almost 100,000 jobs from May through September. While Stats Canada has not released the figures for a third quarter GDP growth, it is possible that the economy has already begun contracting in the third and fourth quarters, and therefore we are already in a technical recession. But the elephant in the room is the massively inflated government debt. From March 2020 to April 2022, the federal government spent a whopping $576 billion on COVID-19 measures, largely taking the form of various supports to businesses. In order to do this, the government borrowed approximately $700 billion. The result has been that the federal debt has exploded, from $757.9 billion in 2019 to $1.569 trillion in 2021. Consolidated government debt, including all liabilities for all layers of government, rose to $2.942 trillion in 2021, and we can only imagine that it has gotten worse since then as the government has continued their program of deficit spending. This means government debt is more than 147% of GDP. Up until now, the government and the Bank of Canada have been defending their policy on the grounds that debt wasn't a big concern, as debt servicing costs have been low due to the super low interest rates. But now, with interest rates being jacked up by the Bank of Canada, this debt will increasingly become a problem. This is a ticking time bomb, which cannot be avoided, and will likely lead to a crisis of public finance. We should remember that government debt was the key question following the 2008-2009 crisis. The bloated debt was becoming unwieldy for governments, with debt payments taking up an increasing portion of the budget. The International Monetary Fund pushed an austerity agenda to make workers and youth pay for the crisis, and this provoked political explosions all over the world. Occupy Wall Street, the Arab Spring, the Indignados movement in Spain, and the 2012 Quebec student strike were all examples of the political result of capitalist governments' attempts to offload the effects of the crisis onto the backs of the working class. Historically, the Canadian ruling class has had no room to maneuver. Capitalist politicians and economists have been able to expand the fat built up from the system to avoid the worst effects of the crisis of capitalism and thus largely avoid revolution. But as the capitalist crisis deepens, this fat, and therefore the room to maneuver, is being whittled away. While the Liberals under Justin Trudeau have for some time pushed the pause button on the class struggle through deficit spending, the magic money tree will cease to bear fruit, and harsh material reality will force itself on the government. Indeed, all the mainstream bourgeois economists have now shifted their tune and are counseling restraint and balanced budgets. As former Bank of Canada Mark Carney said, "This is a time to reduce deficits, in my opinion, not increase them." As Canadians are caught in the middle of this horrible situation in which their cost of living decreases, the Bank of Canada is now the target of widespread criticism. On the right, newly elected Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made headlines for saying that he would fire Tiff Macklem and replace him with a new governor who would reinstate our low inflation mandate, protect the purchasing power of our dollar, and honor the working people who earned those dollars. However, if you are looking for a solution to inflation, Poilievre's cure is definitely more painful than the disease. The thrust of Poilievre's argument is that the inflation is caused by the policies implemented in 2020 and the explosion in government spending. Therefore, Poilievre's solution is mass austerity across the board. In this, Poilievre is in complete agreement with Trudeau, Freeland, and Macklem, who all sidestep the question of the hundreds of billions of dollars showered on corporate Canada. All of these capitalist politicians agree that the working class should pay for the crisis. They just disagree on how. While Macklem's so-called solution for inflation is increasing interest rates, Poilievre's solution is cuts to social programs. The difference is that while Macklem wants hundreds of thousands of workers to lose their jobs, Poilievre insists that these lost jobs must be from the public sector. Pick your poison. On the left, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has criticized Macklem and the Bank of Canada for their one-size-fits-all solution to inflation, which is laying the groundwork for a recession and making life hard for most people, especially working families and Canadians living on fixed incomes, like seniors living with disabilities. As Singh explained, it's going to mean a very likely recession where hundreds of thousands of Canadians are going to lose their jobs. Correctly, Singh has targeted the astronomical profits being raked in by corporate Canada, stating, "We see clearly that corporations are making these massive profits. They're making record-setting profits, and their record-setting profits are directly contributing to the cost of living going up." While Poilievre blames government spending for inflation, Singh and the NDP have targeted corporate profiteering, calling it greedflation. With this in mind, the NDP is proposing that the excess profits companies have made over the pandemic be taxed in one way or another, and that wealth be redistributed to Canadians to help them with the rising cost of basic goods and services. While the NDP is pointing in the right direction, these measures won't do anything about inflation. In fact, if the government increases corporate taxes or implements some sort of measure to tax excess profits, what is stopping companies from raising prices in response? Furthermore, the capitalists also have the option of taking their money out of the economy if the government imposes too many measures that get in the way of their profiteering. The fact of the matter is that we cannot control what we do not own. This is why the only solution to the crisis of capitalism is nationalization and socialism. Capitalism is an innately irrational system, and the current predicament is just one of the many examples of this. The only solutions proposed by bourgeois economists like Macklem or capitalist politicians like Polyev result in a massive transfer of wealth from the workers to the capitalists. However, there is hope. While the crisis of the capitalist system is unleashing this horrible situation on working class people, it also produces a solution to this problem. No longer is it possible for there to be a compromise between labor and capital. The most clear example of this is to be found in every single collective bargaining process, where previously 1 or 2% wage increases would be grudgingly accepted by workers. Now everyone knows that this amounts to a huge cut in real wages, as we point to the fall of 2021 inflation results in strikes. This is precisely what is happening. After a long period of hibernation, the working class in Canada is starting to awaken. According to Statistics Canada, 1,897,867 workdays have been lost in 2022 so far due to strike action, an increase of 573,000 from last year and the highest amount since 2009, and the year isn't even over. This points the way forward. The capitalists and their economists are not going to save us. As Marx said, the emancipation of the working class must be conquered by the working classes themselves. As the working class flexes its muscle, workers relearn the militant traditions that made unions possible in the first place and won decent wages and conditions. The most notable example of this is the 55,000 Ontario education workers who have been in conflict with Doug Ford's Conservative government, demonstrating the power of the working class. For the first time in Canadian history, a government was forced to retract back-to-work legislation faced with the threat of a general strike. While this event was unprecedented, we should get used to this sort of thing. We live in unprecedented times. Similar unprecedented movements of the working class are erupting all over the world, from the Starbucks unionization wave in the United States to the militant strikes in Britain, which are winning wage increases above inflation. The workers are rising up around the world. Many people may be despondent or depressed when faced with the capitalist crisis, but as revolutionary Marxists, we find our optimism and faith in the working class. Socialism is not some magical utopia dreamed up in the head of Karl Marx, but the logical conclusion of the struggle of the working class. The Marxists in Canada, organized in Fight Back and La Repose Société, are fighting for this perspective in the movement. Join us to fight the darkness of capitalism with a bold and optimistic socialist future. That's a great article. That's a great article written by Fight Back right there. Of course, we've had people in the chat. Hope you are all doing well on TikTok there. Hope everything's going well for you guys. Let's take a look. What have you guys been saying? Yeah, it appears they want massive layoffs. Exactly, Candle Twilight. They've been stating that pretty clearly, right? Pretty straightforwardly. Automation and universal basic income is the only way to keep slavery tolerable in the future. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Merlin, right? Like, you got to make sure that there's a baseline of support. Elan Rabinowitz, I don't know if I've ever seen you. Your facts are terrible. Oh, good start. Good start, Elan. Yeah, how can you say capitalism is terrible when in World War II Stalin killed 5.7 to 7 million people? You mean Nazis, bro? Is that what you're talking about? Stalin had no food. There was also no food, bro. Like, come on. Like, is that the first comment you've ever made in your life? That's what that sounds like, right? Yeah, yeah. Oh, in World War II, Stalin killed a bunch of Nazis. You're right, bro. Like, whoa, that's funny. Hey, all right. Good to see you, bud. Hope you're here to contribute in a beautiful way. So why do you think communism hasn't succeeded in the past? I mean, I think that's a fair question, Minnie, because, but you got to remember, like, who's defining what success means, right? So what is success in that limit? What does that mean, right? Like, I would argue that being the first culture into space is a success. I would argue that industrializing your country in a single generation is a success. I would argue that defeating the Nazis is a success, right? Like these are major communist successes, without a doubt. Why did the Communist Union fail? Because they failed to build institutions that could live past the communist leaders. And that's something I think that China has learned from. That they have built these institutions, right? Because it's not enough for a group of people to come together and say, we want to do this. We want to be socialists. We want to do this. You've got to find a way to build an institution to pass the baton to the next generation successfully so that next generation doesn't get corrupted and return back to capitalism or return back to feudalism even, right? And to me, that's what's crucially important. And that's the lesson that I think lots and lots of people, lots and lots of communist nations are learning now. And we're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how that goes. And also, I mean, you want to talk about other, like, China has lifted 800 million people out of poverty in the last 20 years. I would argue that that's a pretty major success, right? Like, China is steadily on track to be the largest economy. I'd say that's a major success. You take a look at what happens in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia post the wars that America inflicted on them, and you can see that they're rebuilding and where they are now as a success for communism. So I feel like the people who define success, when capitalists define success, they literally create an unachievable goal. And they say, you've never reached this unattainable, unachievable goal. So it's a total abject, complete and total failure. And I think that if you actually take a look at what communists did achieve when they were in power, you can see pretty clearly that they had major successes that cannot be denied. Being the first people into space cannot be denied. Being the people who defeated the Nazis cannot be denied, right? Lifting 800 million people out of poverty over 20 years, it cannot be denied. Like, it's just we're so inundated with propaganda. We're so inundated, and we work so hard to learn so little. Like, we try so hard to be illiterate that, like, I actually think it would be easier to learn stuff about your neighbors. It would be easier to know more than we do. We just put in way more effort to be this ignorant about what's going on in the rest of the world. Danny Dorr, hope you're here to be beautiful, bud. Can you explain the motivation to work, develop skills when profit is no longer a possibility? I think people do that. Just straight up. Like, I think that this, like, and I'm not trying to be insulting when I say this, Danny, because I'm going to take it that your question is asked in good faith. I just think it's dingy. I think it's dingy capitalism. That capitalists think so little of you. Capitalists think so little of you, of humanity and of people, while literally walking around being like, the individual's the greatest individual that ever individual, but they wouldn't do anything without this institution of capital, that the only reason why anybody ever does anything is because money, right? And I mean, you that's falsifiable. Just like, look at what happened pre-cap. Like, no buildings were built pre-capital. There was no academies. There was no one writing anything. There were no works there were no major great works that were written pre-capital, right? Like, it's falsifiable on the face of it. People want to do stuff. People want to work. They want to develop skills. They want to do it. Like, you're genuinely telling me that if it wasn't for just basic money, that people would just, sit around, like, and stare at one another? I don't believe it. And I think that you have to have a very, like, dingy view of what humans are and what they do in the world to think that. Now, can humans do shitty things? Of course. I'm seeing that in my chat all the time, right? Looked over, Ronnie McNutt. Yeah, here you go, right? But people want to develop. They want to work. They want to. Like, they want to know more. They want to learn. They want to pursue philosophy, history. They want to. And I just think that that's just innately true of humanity. And Mao Zedong killed 45 million people, even though I don't have evidence of it. How could you possibly think this communism is great? Well, I mean, Ilan, dude, if you don't know anything about the subject, you can make whatever claim you like, right? Like, that's all. Like, you don't know anything about the subject, Ilan. Like, really look into yourself and ask yourself, what have you actually read? What have you actually seen? And if you're actually saying that Mao Zedong killed 45 million people, like, there's no evidence of this. It's just something that's claimed, right? It's just something that's said. But there isn't a political commentary, a commentator that saw it. There isn't an eyewitness. There's no physical evidence of it occurring. There's no refugee crisis. Like, it's literally just Westerners lying is all it is. And people like you who don't know any better, because all you've ever done is listen to, like, the National Post or the CIA, or the New York Times, the same organization in my mind. Like, you don't actually know what you're talking about, right? And I'm just beseeching you to be more honest with yourself and actually learn something about the subject before you talk about it. Oh, I could make line go up. I have no reason to live. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where's your source that China lost a huge chunk of the population? Like by your numbers, like, really think about what you just said, dude. So 45 million people died in China in the 1950s. So the population of China at that time is 600 million people. It loses 45 million people. That's an enormous chunk. That's huge, right? And how did Mao keep power while that was happening? Like, it just seems so unrealistic and so absurd to not be taken very seriously at all, frankly. Like, you just got to think about it for a few minutes to just be like, oh yeah, like, and I've seen the number as high as 100 million. Like, literally a sixth of the Chinese population is supposed to have been killed by Mao Zedong. A sixth of the Chinese population. And we're supposed to take that seriously with no physical evidence, no testimonies, no, not a picture, nothing. Just no refugee crisis. That's my favorite thing. No refugee crisis. You're telling me that, like, 5 to 10% of the people died. So that means you're going to have 5 to 10% of the people fleeing, right? And it just doesn't exist. There's just no record of this, right? And I know where it came from, right? There was a great Indian Marxist professor who did the research on this and located where the story came from. It was a couple statisticians paid by the Reagan administration to bullshit some population data they had about China and say that, oh, there was like a little gap right here, and then that must mean that they died of a famine. And they literally just made the story up. Straight up. They just made the story up. And it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Like, for real. Show me the evidence. Go do some research. Find me the evidence of this. Doesn't exist. Believe me. Like, believe me. I've definitely looked around for it. If there's nothing to learn, then there's nothing to do. I don't see myself being happy like that. But there is always something to learn. Like, what if the profit motive disappeared, you'd still have books. Like, you'd still have knowledge. You'd still have information and facts, right? You'd still have people around you. You'd still have, like, the existence of life. Like, you're telling me you're not going to go try to even have sex? Like, it just seems like it just seems odd that so much emphasis has been tied up on this, like, fake money dollars that we created, you know? It seems so odd. Yeah, the profit motive dictate your will to live. Yeah, probably not. Let's be honest. They're not remarkable. Not for communists, certainly not for capital. They just have the truisms. Yeah, rent's due soon. Just go look it up. It's tough in any school who leads about... It's taught in any school who learns about the Cold War or World War II. Is it? No. Right? Near as I can tell, everything I've ever experienced has been that the claim is made, no evidence is given, and then they just walk away from it. And if you don't just regurgitate that as if it's a truism, then you get the F, right? But if you actually go look for the evidence, it just doesn't exist. Making money gives me closure. As much as what a nice life being equal, I like people have actual different lives to each other. It would be boring otherwise. Minnie, I just think people would have different lives. Like, there are as many different ways to live as there are people in the world. Like, I really think that you're just discounting, like, humanity and how people are. And insisting that it all gets tied up into the system of capital and this system of money. And the money's not even real in the first place. Like, we literally just pluck it out of thin air. And so it's kind of odd that we're hinging our civilization on something that doesn't exist. Like, so much for us being secular, I suppose. Yeah, Ligon Dizzy going back and forth, right? Oh, you okay, buddy? Oh, you okay? No. Let's deal with it right here, buddy. Here we go, buddy. Sorry, guys. Got to pause for a second. Milo has this reverse sneeze thing that happens to him, where he starts snorting. Yeah, there you go, buddy. You okay? You okay? You okay? You okay? And if I don't deal with it, he can actually hurt himself pretty badly, so I've got to actually deal with it. You okay, buddy? You okay? You okay? Okay. I'll let you go. Let you go. Good boy. Good boy, buddy. That's a good boy, buddy. What a good boy you are. What a good boy. Can you imagine that? Like, literally just like you start choking on your own hard palate and you can't stop choking. It's just bullshit. Yeah, I back and forth. I spent a decade or more learning a skill while working 2 jobs at the end of it all. Yeah, capitalism said go push a mop. Exactly. Like, and I think radio is bringing something interesting into the conversation, which is that people do learn skills only to find out that those skills are not valued by the owners. And so the owners say, go do something we consider valuable. So if you, like, learn about the history of Indigenous studies, or if you, like, do Indigenous studies, if you, like, learn about the history of your own country, if you learn ethics, if you go get a philosophy degree, if you go into the humanities at all, right, to try to better understand not just yourself, but the society that you live in, right? Well, what do capitalists tell you? Like, go work in a cafe. Like, that's essentially what happens. And I just, it's sort of a nonsense position. So without profit, what other way would there be to signify status, success, achievement? Well, are those things valuable? Like, here's what I find very interesting about this, Danny. Like, there's 3 hard truisms about life that seem to be widely ignored by the vast majority of the population. Truism number 1, you are a randomly generated being. You didn't have a say in where you were generated, and where you were generated has a lot more to do with how you are in the world than any choice you will ever make in your life. If you're born into a village in the middle of the Sahara Desert, you're going to have a very different life than if you're born to a wealthy family in New York. And you're going to have a very different life if you're born to a poor family in New York, right? So the circumstances of your birth, your random generation, matters far more than any individual decision you will ever make in your life, right? Hard truism number 2. You will have a series of experiences, and those series of experiences are just as valid as anybody else's experiences. That you want to pretend as though that they are better or worse. You want that for yourself, but it isn't true at all. And why? Because of truism number 3. We all die. We all die. All of this is dust and ash and wind that will blow away into sand over the passage of time. And how about, instead of dedicating yourself to the manic pursuit of status, success, or achievement, you dedicate yourself to enjoying the fleeting time you have as a randomly generated creature, enjoying experiences along with everyone else, and try to just get along with the people who are in the world. And if you find yourself in a position where you are able to help someone who's having a more difficult time than you are, then you should take that, and you should do that. Because that's the greatest blessing that a person can do, is to sacrifice a piece of themselves for the benefit of the other. My thoughts are that if you work, you live. Anyone can get a job, and yet people still struggle to do so. Money is available, yet people want to wait years just for equal society. No, Minnie, like you're missing the structural reality, right? People struggle to get jobs because the structure of the system insists that people don't have jobs, right? Like both the Bank of Canada and the Federal Reserve have explicitly and openly stated that they need a certain degree of unemployment and that they want unemployment to go up, right? So you cannot tell me that everybody just needs to have a job in a system that demands a certain degree of unemployed people, right? So the structure of the system itself, by the institutions that exist in the society, 100% guarantee that there is a certain degree of poverty and desperation in the society, because the system demands it to be so. And if you're just going to ignore that, even though they explicitly state it, then you can basically make any claim you like. And you can basically say anything you like about the system you live in. The Bolsheviks killed more people in half a year than the Nazis ever did. Okay, bud. Read a book. I mean, unless those people were Nazis, then, I mean... But that's a real low-level comment, dude. Success is determined by who you are, not an imaginary ideology, yeah? Yeah, and some people can't work. Major brings up a really interesting point, right? Like, what do we do about disabled people? The solution that we have here in Canada for disabled people is to reduce their services and put them into a state of desperation, but we'll give them medically assisted dying, right? That is the solution that we're doing here in Canada. That we are cutting the services, we are cutting the baseline of their existence to the degree where they can't survive, and many of them are on the brink of homelessness. And so they're choosing, instead of dying in the street, because they have a disability, right? They're not going to survive in the street. So instead of dying in the street, they go to a hospital and get euthanized. That's what's happening here in Canada. And that's the capitalist solution to this. It's pretty brutal. Yeah. We're also the only species driven by quote-unquote success. What's the point? We should be living like the animals we are, singing, dancing, creating. I mean, just existing, right? How much is enough money, though, asks Matthias. Yeah? Should other people starve in the streets while some have more money than they could ever spend? Yeah, if you're married to the idea of money, like, at what point is it enough? Like, a man like Jeff Bezos, he's got $100 billion. Like, but if that 100 billion was reduced to 1 billion, his quality of life wouldn't change even one iota, right? And so it's odd that we have this system going on, and that it gets defended because people will feel like they can't contribute or something, like some odd little ideology, when there are real consequences happening in the world. Never Gonna Give You Up says, explain how the Soviet famines were a crime towards humanity. We have opened up the Soviet archives. Even capitalists have gone in and taken a look at the Soviet archives. Lots of people have written books about it. And the response is that while there was a famine, it wasn't intentional. and the Soviets were doing everything they could to alleviate it. Like, and that's capitalists that say that, and anti-communists that say that. Because if you want to be credible and you want to and you want to actually have academic credibility and actually be a historian of the Soviet Union, you've got to admit when things are correct or things are right or things are wrong. Like, we opened up the Soviet archive. Putin opened up the Soviet archive. The capitalists and the anti-communists went and took a look at the Soviet archives, took a look at the documents, and they've all, to a man, they've all walked out saying, "Yep, they didn't intend it. It wasn't. They weren't trying to create a genocide. Famines do happen in societies, right? Humanity has a long history of dealing with famines, and it looks to us like the Soviets did everything they could to alleviate it as quickly as possible. So much for this Nazi talking point that you've got." Cotton, I learned a few skills: how to shoot, how to act, how to manage a stage, how to sew, how to do BLS. I mean, I'm no better off than the majority of other wage-earning workers. Yeah, because at the end of the day, the only real skill that seems to matter is salesmanship. That's all. Like, if it doesn't matter how skilled you are in anything if you can't sell yourself, right? Because we live in a culture of salesmen, and so if you're not selling yourself, right? Because you have to sell yourself because you're owned by owners who own you. And if you don't sell yourself, if you can't successfully sell yourself, then it doesn't matter how skillful you are, right? So the only skill that matters in a capitalist society is grifting, right? And that's why we're seeing at the highest possible levels. Just take a look at what's going on with Twitter, right? Elon Musk is a grifter. It's real obvious now, guys. Like, it's real obvious. This is a society of grifters. Like, for God's sakes, Donald Trump was elected the president of the United States. He's a grifter. Like, so the only way to attain success in this society is to become a better grifter. That's all. Just grift. Is that really how you want your society to be built? I don't. Didn't Bank of Canada's prez say that inflation is going up because of too much employment? Yeah, he has said that before. Yeah, Adam, thank you. I think the decisions you make matter much more than your place in the world. Danny, really think about that, dude. Like, really, 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 really think about that, bro. Like, I really want you to pause right now with me. Let's do this. Because this is very important. Okay? And I'm really trying to not insult you. Okay? Fundamentally, what you are saying when you say, I think the decisions you make matter much more than your place in the world, okay? Fundamentally, what you are saying is that the energy of a single individual can possibly outweigh the energy of all other individuals, every individual who has ever lived, including all institutions that those individuals have created and persist, and also the energy of all the forces of the universe combined. That is your claim. And I really, really want you to hear that and understand that what you are saying is the energy of a single individual can possibly outweigh the energy of all existence. And be confronted with how fucking stupid that sounds, bud. Like, that's what you're saying. You got to get confronted with that. Because I think there are a lot of grifters in the society today. People like Jordan Peterson, people like Ben Shapiro, people like Steven Crowder, people like Matt Walsh, who are espousing this doctrine and do so by speaking very quickly and saying a lot of fancy words. And fundamentally what they are conning you into believing is that your individual existence matters more than all of creation. It's not something I can take very seriously, bud. And I really think that you've got to humble yourself a little bit more. Like, really. these are unnumbered legions that are refusing to work. Who are they? What's the shortage of human labor? I'm amazed these people genuinely think a significant part of the population won't work. I mean, take a look at it. Here's a great one to say. To those who are saying people won't work, then why is there so much volunteer work that's done? Like, there are hundreds of thousands of hours that are done by volunteer. Like, what's going on there? There's no profit motive there. People are volunteering. They're not making any money. In fact, they're giving their time away for free in volunteer pursuits. Like, what's the story there? It seems to collapse your entire thesis. I think it's really power you take issue with. I mean, sure. Like, no, specifically, Danny, like, and I cannot be clearer about this. It's that there is an ownership class and an owned class. That's the issue. Like, sure, you could describe that as one group has power and the other does not have power, but the reality is that there's a structural difference. That if you own things, you live in a different world. There's a clear divide between those who do not own things. And the interests of the owned class are not the interests of the ownership class. And most importantly, if the owned class improves its status or lot in life, improves its material conditions, that comes at a cost to the ownership class, and vice versa. And to me, this is untenable. You cannot build a country or a civilization on this. It's not possible, because you are constantly at war. And you simply will tear yourselves apart by definition, by the very nature of the existence of this central struggle. And we simply don't talk about it. Like, it's simply not discussed. That, is it valid that there's one class of people who own everything and another class of people who own nothing, and that the class of people who own nothing do all the work, and the class of people who own everything do none of the work? Is that valid? Is there validity in how that arrangement works? I think it's basically impossible to rid the bulk of mankind for the desire for power. I don't think it's socialized. It's innate. I mean, that's a very philosophical point you're making, Danny. And that's why I try to draw us back to, like, the more material kind of aspect. Yeah, people want power. People are really only truly motivated by three things: power, love, and vengeance. Those are really the only motivating things that humanity has. Knowledge and money are power, right? Like, all of the stories you've ever seen in your life, all of the characters who were interesting were always pursuing power, love, or vengeance. And so, yeah, you'll never be rid of that, because those are core, centralized truths about what it is to be alive, and true motivators of what it is to be a human being. But you can acknowledge that and attempt to build institutions and institutional power that prevents power from becoming centralized or disused. Because power in societies becomes troubles. Like, power in societies, when the institutions respond to the people, is useful. Because the people stand up and say, this is what we want, and then the power structure goes, then we'll do it. And then they go and do it. Right? But if the power structure ceases to respond to the people, then you're in trouble. Then you're in a lot of trouble. And that's exactly what's happened in capitalist society. That the power structure no longer responds to the needs of the people. It's exclusively responding to a small group of owners, the oligarch class. And that's where the trouble is coming from. Apparently, the large chunk of China's population dying in the 60s, which didn't happen, was due to the Great Leap Forward. It was an intentional act that killed 30 to 45 million people to make the country communist. It's just nonsense, bud. Like, it's just nonsense. Like, Mao's Great Leap Forward was a massive industrialization project that worked. right? And so the capitalists created a story so that you would think, oh, 30 to 45 million people died, instead of the massive resounding success of the industrialization of the nation over a short period of time. Like, the actual narrative, when you listen to it, is stupid as stupid gets. Like, literally, the narrative is that Chinese children were going around killing sparrows. This is the story the capitalists tell. That Chinese children were instructed to go kill sparrows. Those sparrows were what was responsible for planting seeds. And so less crops grew, and that created a famine that killed 30 to 45 million people that we have no evidence of. There's literally no evidence this happened. Like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, the story is stupid. It sounds stupid. The Chinese don't talk about it because it didn't happen. And there isn't a commentator. There isn't an eyewitness. There's no refugee crisis. Like, this is one of these points where I literally get to say, source, bro. Like, where's your source? Like, where is this? Like, show me the evidence. I'll change my tune. I'll do it immediately. I'll gladly change my tune if you can show me evidence. Like, I'm not just going to uncritically believe the CIA. Yeah, Chat Ann, I know. I don't respond to my TikTok chat because it's just... First of all, there's like the stream of consciousness aspect. If I wanted to be nice, right? If I wanted to be nice, I'd be like, yeah, it's a stream of consciousness. I prefer this, where it's a little bit more measured, right? I can curate this a little bit better. I've got a longer history with my YouTube chat, so there's more established people who come in and can talk, and so I prefer this. Whereas the stream of consciousness that happens on Twitter, on TikTok, I find to be quite overwhelming and unmanageable. And then on top of it, there's this Ronnie shit that's going on. And that'll go away eventually. Like, children move on, right? Like, Chris Rock will get slapped by Will Smith at the Oscars and everyone will forget about it, right? But yeah, like, that's why I tell people, if you're on TikTok and you're looking at the chat and you're being like, oh my God, this is a total disaster, come on over to YouTube. It's in the description. You want an adult conversation. You want to experience what it is to be on the internet with adults. You can come on over. And Chadan, I hope you're here to participate in a beautiful way. Yeah, dude, I know all about the TikTok chat, dude. Absolutely. I'm not surprised by it. That's why I've just decided not to interact with it. It's just, that is what it is. Yeah, there's so little assistance for the disabled. It is sad. Of course, Campbell Twilight. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your expression of compassion, man. Like, it seems to be rarer and rarer these days, right? Like, it just seems to be rarer and rarer. Any one of us can become disabled at any moment. Like, literally, the universe right now could just say, yeah, your C4 spinal, that part of your spine just is going to break. It's just going to go, and that's going to be the end of you. You're disabled now, right? It literally can go down that way. Like, I remember my father was literally just walking down the street, and his back just went, and he was in bed for 2 months, right? Took forever for it to get all worked out. It's like, it can happen at any moment to anyone at any time. And yet we pretend as though, like, literally our premier, Doug Ford, here in the province of Ontario, has said on several occasions that the best thing for the disabled to do is go get jobs. It's disgraceful. It's despicable, right? People vote for this. It's unbelievable. Yes, if they align themselves with the truth. Look at Christ. Danny Dorr. We got a Christian in the chat. I'm of an evangelical Christian background. So I appreciate the Christian message. I get worried about Christians. I get worried that they are not actually reading their own book. I get worried about that. Like, I always tell people, right? You'll be happy to hear this, Danny. I tell people, leftists should be reading the Bible. We should be reading the Bible. We should not be ceding this text to evangelical right, to the Christian fascists that exist within the Republican Party. We should not be ceding the authority of the intellectual authority of this text to far right grifters, people like Pat Robertson, right? We should become experts in the Bible. And I find that the left gets really hung up on arguments that do not matter, right? Like they constantly will say these things like, well, Christ didn't really exist, you know. It doesn't matter. I can't imagine a more irrelevant thing to say, right? Like if Christ existed, great. If Christ didn't exist, doesn't that mean it's more impressive? We're still talking about this fictional character. Like, sorry that it's popular. Sorry it's the thing. Like, yeah, okay, you can be embarrassed by it if you like, but it's a central text that a huge group of people pretend to read. You should probably read it and probably know something about it. And what I love to say, especially to leftists, you're going to find out if you read one of the Gospels, pick Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, pick one, right? And read one of the Gospels. You're going to find out pretty quickly that these right-wingers are grifters, that they are illiterate, they do not read this book, they do not care about Christ, they do not care what Christ has to say, and it's obvious. Like, how many times has Christ said, give your money to the poor? How many times does Christ say things like, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven? How many times does Christ talk shit about the rich? He's doing it constantly. And yet, it's the wealthiest people in the society that supposedly have the interests of Christ at heart when they make decisions. I think it's total fucking narcissistic bullshit. Read the Bible. Become experts. Do not cede biblical authority to grifters. Like I said, you can Google it yourself. Literally so much evidence, proof right there in photos, documents, articles, etc. Mini dude, like, no. Straight up. Like, no. It doesn't actually exist. Like, that's the part about it that is so crazy to me. Go do it yourself. Go do it yourself. And the CIA saying it's true doesn't make it true, right? The most damning thing, Minnie, the most damning thing about, in my view, go find books written on China, written in 1975. Go find books written on China. Go find the academic books written about Mao Zedong, written in the 1970s. Go find those Chinese books. They do not talk about this famine because it did not happen. That it's a fiction that was invented in the 80s under Reagan. That's what happened. And I challenge you on this. Go find the article. Give me the headline of the article. Give me the headline of the article that you find that you think is concrete. And I will put it here. We will go through it together. Because if you can convince me, I'll change my tune. It was designed to create the communist society. Yeah, because the best way to create a society is to kill 1/10 of your population, right? That's the best way to do it. John, I think you should share my comic on Channel 1 Communist Manifesto again. It would be easier to explain with a visual. Oh, where is that even, Anemone? Put it in the general, okay? Yeah, dude, I know. B16, yeah, I know all about my chat. Thanks, guys. Oh, you're one of these guys. Never mind. Get out of here. What a fucking loser. Sorry, man. If you're gonna come in here and be a loser, I'm just gonna get rid of you right away. Like, a man committed suicide. Like, have basic human dignity. Like, have basic human decency. Grow up. It's just childish, frankly. Wherever you are, Ronnie, I hope you're doing well. You deserve better than this. The Soviet famines were intentional. No, literally no academic says so. Everyone behind the October Revolution said that the famines were intentional to move the rural population to the city. Literally no evidence of this. My info is backed up by random idiot. Okay. I don't care about this. Like, it's... sorry, dude. Like, your source is probably a Nazi. Like, yeah, if you're making the claim, Minnie, the burden of proof is on you, bud. You can't disprove a negative, or you can't prove a negative. Why are anti-communists so desperate to convince communists? You don't see how much effort is thrown at flat earthers. I don't trouble myself with people who are extremely wrong and lack effect. Yeah, Compton, there is that, isn't there? My favorite iteration of this is when capitalists say communism will fail. It fails naturally. It's just a natural failure, and then spend billions of dollars to bomb them. Spends billions of dollars to like coup governments, to overthrow shit, to do all kinds of stuff. It's like, oh well, if it fails naturally, then why don't you just let it fail? Right? If communism is such a failure, why aren't you just allowing it to fail? Why are you spending money? Why are you spending resources in order to destroy Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, North Korea? Why are you spending so much money to coup governments throughout South America and Africa? Why are you spending all that money if it just naturally fails? It's just naturally going to fail, right? So let them do it. Be like, okay, guys, it's just going to naturally fail anyway, right? And then you'll come back to where the superior system of capital lives, right? Nope. So where's the rugged capitalist efficiencies and all of that? Don't they want to save that money? Why are they wasting that money destroying countries and overthrowing and cooling governments and doing all that kind of stuff if it's just going to fail anyway? Maybe. Could be. They're full of shit. Could be. It just surprises me that China took no effort trying to cover it up. You can't cover up something that didn't happen. Yeah, it was a success, but at the cost of millions. Oh, but at what cost? I mean, source, trust me, bro. Exactly. I need Yetis. This, too, will fall on deaf ears because people hate the Bible. Yeah, I think you're right, Yetis. Like, I mean, the Bible has become like a pariah sort of a thing, that we think we're superior for being illiterate. Like, we think that the less we learn and the less we read, the smarter we are. That we actually think in this very kind of smug kind of way that in this very smug kind of way, we say, oh, I'm smarter for reading less. It's staggering. Nobody wants to be a communist. Millions are dying for the cause of it. If you don't know anything about the subject, you can make whatever claim you like. China is going to clip you Yankees. Ain't shit you going to do about it. Yeah, play Fortnite and cope. I love this statement. I love it. Dude, the burden of proof is on you to prove somehow that the Chinese famine wasn't real. Okay, I just did it. Claims made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. I just did it. Bye. Evidence, please. The CIA saying it happened isn't evidence. And again, mini flight. Like, go find the article, dude. Like, what are you still doing here, bud? Yeah, go find something. Absolutely. Tell me about it. I'll write it up. Right? We'll put it up. Just if you could do me one favor, one tiny little caveat. I'm not going to show anything gruesome, okay, dude? So if you give me an article and it's got, like, bloody shit all over it, like, YouTube will fuck me up for that. So do me that favor, okay? Here we go. Anemone, our resident scholar. Historical materialism. I just want to put up one of these. I like this one the best. Socialism. No bourgeoisie. They took my 10 mansions. My private jet's all gone. Means of production. Proletariat owns. So this is what full feels like. From each according to their ability to each according to their needs. Thanks, Anemone. It's not a claim if it's a widely accepted tragedy. That's the definition of a claim. Like, just because something is widely accepted doesn't mean it happened, bud. Like, I feel like I'm ruddering up against, like, logical fallacy after logical fallacy. If it's so easy to prove, like, I could prove the Holocaust in an instant. It would be easy. It'd be really, really easy to do, right? Like, there are enormous institutions. There are enormous mainstream institutions that have done a lot of good work to really, really showcase this, it would be easy to show, right? Should be the same thing here. Like, you're telling me like 45 million people died? Should be really easy. Like, why isn't there like a museum to this in China? Why isn't there a museum to this somewhere? Like, where is that? Right? Because it's hard to fill a museum with nothing. It's gotten to the point where I hear people say Jesus was killed by the Catholic Church. Yeah, fantastic. Have a good one, radio. I hope you do well, bud. Streamer, please check the link in my comment section. It explains everything. What's the Discord link invite? The Patreon. You donate to the Patreon, and that'll get you into the Discord. You got to donate $1. Costs $1. You donate $1, gets you into the Discord. One day you should host a VC voice chat live stream. I don't know what that is. Anything. See, and this is, of course, the counter argument that's made that China is so weak and pathetic and full of a bunch of losers, but they're so powerful that they can literally cover up a massacre or a famine of 50 million people, right? Like, over and over and over again, the capitalists say this about China, that China somehow has super heroic powers where it can somehow manage to do a mass cover-up of 50 million people, like 45 million people. It's just done a massive cover-up. Like, unbelievable. Voice chat with your fellow Discord patrons. Well, I have done that before, Yetis, actually. That's a good idea. Would you like to? Yetis? Are you in the Discord? If you're in the Discord, why not? I'll pop you in. Could make for some great content, keep things fresh. Yep, I've done that before in the past. The reason why I didn't really keep doing it is because it didn't seem like there was that much demand. Like, I think there was like one of my followers was really keen, and then everybody else was just kind of like, no, that's cool. So I didn't really keep doing it because it didn't seem like people really cared that much about it. But if you want to talk to me and you're a Patreon, I'll definitely do that. Dude, Yetis, please God, man, like don't feel the need to donate, okay, bud? If you're experiencing homelessness, bud, I appreciate that. Please, for God's sakes. Like, I mean, I know it's only $1, but Jesus Christ, like I hate the money. I hate the money so much. It drives me crazy. I hate asking for money. I hate looking over at TikTok and being like, hey, give me diamonds. Like, it's just crazy to me. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Yetis. I'm glad things have stabilized for you, bud. That's scary, man. That's really scary, eh? Like, getting up to, like, I know for myself, oh, well, Yetis, you don't have to do that, bud. That's very sweet of you. And I'll be sure to get you in the Discord as soon as I can, man. It's what a sweetheart you are, bud. I'm glad to hear that things are going better for you, man. I know for myself, like, I have definitely experienced, like, I have 1 month's rent in my bank account. Like, that is what I have, and I've experienced that a lot in life. That it's just constantly right at the edge, right? Right at the edge. Jojo, how you doing, bud? Hope you're doing well up there. If a country turned communist, do you think it would turn into communist countries like North Korea and China? That's the thing, is that and China itself says this, and China very cleverly, in my view, has said that what they're doing is socialism with Chinese characteristics, and they've done that in order to try to get fundamentalism out of the discourse. That the concern for the Chinese government, the Chinese people, and Marxists in general, is that they will say, that's funny, I gotta be straight with you. I don't actually know what you're saying. I don't know how to do those things. Sorry, dude. I'm an elder millennial. I barely know how to do this, right? And it's So you're saying check the video, go to the link in my comment section, please. I don't know how to do any of that. Like, what are you talking about? Sorry, bud. But China has said every country is going to have to come to communism in its own way and through its own path, because the conditions that exist within each country, as well as the ethos and ideology of each country, is its own kind of thing. And I think that that's just fundamentally true. That let's just be crazy. Let's say Canada suddenly had a big upswell of communism, and there was a huge communist movement that came up, and everybody was just like, we are going to be communists, communism, right? And it's going to look a lot different than what the North Koreans experienced or what the Chinese experienced, right? It's going to be a different structure and a different society, right? Nope. If you want to be in the Discord, simple as that. It's my Patreon link, costs $1. I definitely curate the Discord. Like, I'm not just gonna let anybody wander into the Discord. It's just $1. Like, it's just $1. Patreon link is in the description. LMAO, you're good. I'm not really good with governments and stuff. Yeah, this is just it. Like, so the propaganda system that exists really relies on our illiteracy. It really relies on it. And it really relies on the idea that you're just going to uncritically accept everything that's said to you. And really think about even your own education. Like, were you taught how your government works when you were educated? Like, you went through, like, elementary and high school, right? Did you get taught how your government works? Did you get taught how to interact with it? Did you get taught the history of your government? I didn't, right? I didn't. So, like, I don't know why. I love it. Still, eh? I'm sorry, I just gotta pause for a moment. People on TikTok, like, you look like him. I've seen this Ronnie McNutt guy. He also had a beard and glasses. Like, that's it. Like, that's what's kind of embarrassing about this whole thing. Like, when I look at a picture of this Ronnie McNutt guy, I'm like, he doesn't look like me. He had a beard and glasses. And the frames aren't even the same. That his frames were actually thicker. Like, it's really, really sad. Like, it's really, really sad that anybody would be like, I'll look forward to when this zeitgeist passes by. Because this is a pretty dark one. Look, this is a pretty dark one. Like, a man, I started live streaming apparently the day that he killed himself. Right? I started live streaming on TikTok the day he did that. And so, and I had no idea it happened. I had no idea who this person was. And the day that it happened is the day that I start streaming. And because I have a beard and glasses, people are like, oh, he's back. Oh my God. And it's embarrassing. Not embarrassing for me. It's embarrassing for all of them. Like, it's as low level intellect as it can get. And not to mention just cruel and bereft of any, like, empathy whatsoever. Like, it's shameful and disgraceful that people know someone who has committed suicide and their response to it is essentially, ho ho, that guy also has a beard. Like, whoa, wow. We have fallen behind, guys. Like, we have fallen pretty far behind. That's a pretty dark place for us to be, frankly. But Mini Flakes, yeah, I don't really care about the whole communist topic. What are you doing here, bud? I'm learning about it from your ideas on the subject. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And how you hate everything I say. I don't hate everything you say, Minnie. Like, I just think you don't know anything about the subject. Like, that's the truth. Like, and I'm not saying that to be cruel or mean to you, but it is what the truth is. Like, you don't know anything about the subject. All you know is what you have heard from people who want to destroy the communist system, right? The very people who are willing to go overseas and bomb Vietnam, bomb Laos, bomb Cambodia to, in their words, quote unquote, staunch the spread of communism, right? Who are willing to commit to a McCarthyist project, right? Literally, have you ever been part of the Communist Party, right? The communist purges that happened under McCarthy, right? The same people who are willing to murder millions of communists and murder millions of people across Southeast Asia while simultaneously creating a Red Scare in their own borders are absolutely going to lie to you about what happened in communist countries. And I don't think that should be unreasonable for you to think, right? Like, really, do you think that psychopathic serial killers who are spreading fear and dissension in their own borders are also telling the truth? I just don't think it can be taken very seriously, bud. And so the real truth, that if you want to continue down this path, and if you want to continue interacting with communists, and if you want to continue learning something, the best thing for you to do is, one, admit you don't know anything. Because you don't. You've never read anything. You've never read a book on the subject. You've maybe seen like a YouTube video from some CIA spook, right? And then two, stop listening to the CIA, bud. The CIA has every single possible reason to want you to think badly of China, to want you to think badly of communism, to want you to think badly of other nations in the world. It is completely incentivized to lie to you 100%. And it will, and it does. But I respect that mini flight, that I'm not American, CIA has nothing on me. That really is a fairly naive statement. That the reach of the CIA, like the CIA has like hundreds of billions of dollars at its disposal. It is erecting fake institutions. It is erecting like fake news organizations, like Radio Free Asia. Like it erects enormous institutions in order to spread enormous lies and disinformation throughout the world. And countries have literally had to like throw entire organizations out of their countries because this is what the CIA was doing. And like it's for some reason we refuse to acknowledge the strength and power of this organization, and we refuse to acknowledge that it's gone rogue. It is the largest terrorist organization on the planet by a lot. It's not close. And it is completely disincentivized, or completely incentivized, to destroy what it perceives to be threats to its own existence or ideological purity. The CIA was created to destroy communism. That's what it was created for. That was the basis of its existence. And now it's gone rogue. It's turned against its own citizens. It operates for its own reasons, for its own rationale. And then again, what's stopping me from saying China is handing out false information to you? Well, I mean, but here's the difference between you and me, Mini Flight, right? Is that I don't accept what China says at face value either, right? That it's all propaganda, right? Like, if it comes out of the CBC, if it comes out of the National Post, right? It's all propaganda. And what matters is that you know who's saying it and why. That's what matters. And through that process, you can build trust in certain institutions and certain places, because you start to understand that certain institutions will tell you the truth, or at least will give you the facts of what's happening. But other ones will occasionally lie to you. And then other ones are just lying to you, right? Like, it's all propaganda. And our job is to disseminate that propaganda and to try to make sense of it. But the only way that you can disseminate that propaganda is if you know who's saying it. And very often, Westerners are especially bad for this because we're so illiterate. We just uncritically believe what we're told by Western institutions, when those Western institutions are being completely backed by CIA. It's a CIA psyop. Like, Operation Mockingbird existed, right? And we haven't had a commission. We haven't had an audit of the CIA since the Church Commission, right? So it's been like 40, 50 years since we've actually gone inside the CIA and said, what are you doing? What is happening here? Tell us what you're doing, right? That's what the Church Commission did. The Church Commission insisted that we know what's going on in the CIA. And it's how we found out that the CIA was doing drug experimentation. It's how we found out that the CIA was sending kill squads into places like Nicaragua, right? It's how we found this stuff out, is because we have the Church Commission. And one of the things that we found out that the CIA was doing, and another thing the CIA was doing is literally bringing Nazis over and getting Nazis involved in organizations like NASA, right? Getting Nazis involved in high-scale military operations, right? That we were doing that all the time. So if we... And one of the things it was doing was what's called Operation Mockingbird, where it was attempting, or I shouldn't say attempting, it very successfully started to take over journalists and get CIA spooks in to mainstream media outlets, right? And that's what they were doing in like the 70s. So what do you think they're doing now, right? They're doing the same stuff. That and I mean, you've got people like Anderson Cooper who has CIA ties, right? Like, I mean, it's all been infected, and to pretend like something else is going on, I think is silly. Like, really, like, there's so much overwhelming evidence at this stage in the game that there is an organization inside of America being funded by Americans that is designed to disseminate disinformation into the American populace. And it does so very efficiently. So until actual evidence is shown about these claims in China, all of it is false. Yeah. And that's how you should think about everything, dude. Like, I don't know why that statement should shock anybody. So until actual evidence is shown about these claims, all of it is false. Correct. I need a source, bud. Sources, please. You are not allowed to walk up to me and make a claim as outrageous as millions of people dead without showing me some pretty hard evidence. That's funny. Sure, bud. I'm doing this in good faith, bud. I don't know what this is. I will shut this down and absolutely ban you. That's very clever of you to have done, by the way. I don't mind doing this. Is this gonna work? I think I gotta get rid of that dot. Do that. Do that. Do that. HTTPS. Do I have to put in the .com? Yeah, I gotta put in the .com. Give me a second. Sorry, dude. No, did I shouldn't have gotten rid of that dot is what it was, right? Hold on. No. I'm messing this up, guys. Sorry. This is all me. You see my technological prowess, right? Like, you're seeing how... Okay, I'm gonna leave that dot. I got rid of that dot last time, and I think that's what did it. Okay. Click the link in the comment section. Dude, I feel like I'm like going through time and space. I really don't want to click this link on stream, dude. I'm doing it. This is good faith. You're an idiot. What is this, dude? All right, bud. I'm gonna let it slide because of your name. That's funny, bud. The only thing that's funny, I would have appreciated more. The only thing that would have made that better, for those of you watching on TikTok, it was just like a fart joke, basically. The only thing that would have made that funnier is if it had been a straight up Rickroll. Straight up Rickroll, dude. Straight up Rickroll. You got to get more Rickrolls in, okay, dude? Like that's my critique of that whole process we just went through. You really committed to that, dude. You had me convinced this was going to be like some anti-China shit. Well done. Well done. I appreciate it. Yeah, dude, I don't ban my critics, right? Like, Mini Flight's still here. I don't ban my critics. I ban disrespectful people. Like, if you're going to disrespect me, I don't need to tolerate that, and I'm not going to tolerate that. And, like, if you think I'm stupid, if you call me stupid, like, I don't care if you think I'm stupid, that's fine. But if you call me stupid, if you call me, like if you were to call me a child molester or something, I would ban you. I wouldn't even think about it, right? And the other thing that I definitely will ban is if you are refusing to acknowledge, like, reality that's right in front of you, right? Like, if I go 1 + 1 = 2 and you say, no, you're stupid, it's 3, I'm just, you're too dumb to talk to, and I'm just going to get rid of you. I think the persistence of getting you to watch the video was commendable. Absolutely that, and like, I gotta tell you, that's funny. That was very subtle, bro. That was very, very subtle. Like, you were just very, like, persistent. You were talking about the Discord invite link. You were just constantly like, John, you're talking about China, and I want to be involved in that, and I think I got something I really want to show you. Just fantastic, bro. Once again. Car Slayer says hi. Bro, when I was a kid, I went by the nickname, my very first internet handle when I was a kid, I'm 11, okay, was Car Killer, spelt with 2 Ks. Car Killer. And now here's Car Slayer. So I feel like we are of a mind, you and I. Yeah, you and I are of a mind. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. You know what? This is the last stream that I'm doing this week. I'm heading into Capitalism. I've got half hour on the clock, so I'm going to spend that half hour. Who's watching good shit? Anybody got any good movies they've been watching recently? I want to talk about culture now. I want to pivot into culture. No, I was straight up just Car Killer. That's what I went by. I even had a little logo that I went by. Like, I had like a little thing where it was a K going this way and a K going the other way, so it made like a little like logo. Chainsaw Man. I've been seeing Chainsaw Man around. It looks gruesome. That's what it looks like. And I gotta tell you, I can't do chainsaws. I can handle a lot. Right? I just cannot do chainsaws. Something about chainsaws just triggers me so badly, and I'm just like, if somebody just goes like pulls a cord on a chainsaw and it's just like in a movie, I just get like, oh, and I really feel like Chainsaw Man is gonna do that to me. There's gonna be a lot of that going on, right? There's gonna be a lot of that going on. You should watch The Leftovers. It's a show on HBO, but it's really good. Well, okay, this is getting the Cotton Seal of approval. I gotta, hold on, The Leftovers. Rewatched it 3 times, biblical themes, death and resurrection. Dude, you guys are fucking convincing me already. Let's go to the official website for the HBO series. Although I worry that this is gonna get me banned or something. I don't, fucking YouTube. So annoying. It has been called The Departure, a stunning global event in which more than 140 people simply vanished. Ah, from Lost Creator. Oh yeah, so it's like a post. It's a post Rapture story, like after the Thanos snap, but actually good. Yeah, okay, I could be convinced. Yeah, like the movie series Left Behind or the book series Left Behind. If you're like hyper Christian, you'll know all about that. And an American supernatural television drama series based on the novel, same name, 3 years after the sudden departure. So The Rapture. I gotta tell you guys, dude, this if a bunch of people mysteriously vanished, we would call it The Rapture. I would call it The Rapture. And if people tried to say stuff like sudden departure or something, I'd be like, shut up. Shut up. It's a rapture. It's what happened. For sure. Right? Fart Sniffer. Fart Sniffer 78, dude. Your name, dude. Like, it's such... Your name is a tragedy. Your name is just a disaster. You came up on my For You page again, John. And again, Bullet Train is a movie. What? Bullet Train? Bullet Train. I'm really gonna jump on board. Oh, this is the new, what's his stupid name? Come on. Handsome man with a chiseled jaw. We all love him. Everybody loves this guy. Nobody doesn't like this guy. If you told me you didn't like this guy, I would say that you're full of shit. Brad Pitt. I did it. Yeah, this is the new Brad Pitt film. I gotta tell you, I'm really looking forward to whatever Brad Pitt produces when he's like 80. I gotta feel like Brad Pitt's last movie is gonna be really interesting. Like, what are the movies that this guy is gonna start to produce? Because he's made some interesting choices in his later life. Like, early on, he very much was just like, we need a handsome man with a jaw. And he's like, I'm a handsome man with a jaw. And he showed up and was exactly what he needed to be, a handsome man with a jaw. And then, I think it was Fight Club. Fight Club was probably the moment when Brad Pitt started to become, like, a more credible... And, like, 12 Monkeys was when he, like, starts to become a more, like, actor. You know? He's not a model being an actor. He's an actor. And now, like, you see some of the stuff that he does. War Machine was really good. He did a great job in War Machine, which is a movie about a general going to he plays a general going to the Afghanistan war, and it really shows the insanity of the Afghanistan war. It's a brilliant film that lots of people don't know about because, for obvious reasons. Like, why would the CIA want people to know that film? And the only reason it got made was because Brad Pitt's in that group of people who are like the people who made The Big Short. That crew has consistently made a bunch of, like, Vice was another good one, right? It's up to you, Fart Sniffer, but I gotta tell you, bud, like, if you're okay with everyone constantly thinking you're sort of dumb, then you do you, right? You do you. But that's the truth. Every time you say anything, everybody goes, this guy. Even if it's good. I just read 5 Chinese articles about the Great Leap Forward. They all talk about the great successes because of the changes it made, but greatly harmed the industrial and agricultural industries. Yeah, that's not a famine, dude. It's not a famine that kills millions of people. That's talking about the successes and the changes and how it affected other industries. Oh no, it was a troubling time. Dang. Like, it literally happens post-war. Right? Like, Mao was the general of a military that fought a war against imperialists to take over a country from the ruling class that was mismanaging it so badly that there had to be a revolution. And then after that revolution, enacted the Great Leap Forward to industrialize the nation, because in Mao's word, we are economically backwards. And so, yeah, troubling time. Like, yeah, I'm never going to deny that. Absolutely. Difficult things happening in the country. For sure. like it would be as if when one of the Apollos exploded on America's journey to get to the moon, right? Some of their things some of their rockets blew up. And then to turn around and be like, America is intentionally killing astronauts. They killed 100 million astronauts. That's kind of the scale we're talking about here. Like, it's just outrageous. Yeah, but okay, please God, oh my God, okay. Please do not uncritically read Wikipedia. Please do not uncritically read Wikipedia. Like, find the source. Find the source. Like, anybody can change anything they like on Wikipedia, and to think that the CIA is not changing information on Wikipedia is silly. I've seen it happen in real time. That when big conflicts and when big things happen, like the CIA will alter information on places like Wikipedia. Like, it's pretty staggering that it has to be said. Like, that's the thing that's kind of flooring me right now. That, like, people will just, like, open up Wikipedia, give it a cursory 30-second glance, take that information as if it's, like, Jesus Christ himself coming down from heaven and branding it onto your forehead and saying, "This is what we say. I am Jesus Christ. Here is the absolute truth of everything that's ever happened. So says Jesus Christ." And it's just like, it's just kind of dumb. It's just kind of like a dumb way of going about it. And like, here's the thing. So, fart sniffer. The Irish potato famine, good thing to bring up, right? The Irish potato famine is 1 million people. So my family immigrates to Canada because of the Irish potato famine, right? Famines create enormous refugee crises, right? When famines are happening, people know about it as it's happening, right? That's true of the Irish potato famine, the Bangladesh famine, the Ukrainian famine, what often gets called the Holodomor, right? When the famine is happening, people know about it as it's happening. Nobody talked about any famine when Mao was around, right? There's no discussion of any famine that occurred. There's no refugee crisis. Like, where is the mass exodus of Chinese people during the 60s? Right? We have an exodus of Chinese people during the war, which makes sense. It's a fucking war, right? So you get Chinatown, right? Every city gets Chinatown. And those Chinatowns come up because of the fucking war. Because of the 100 years of humiliation, because of the bullshit. Well, if your aim is to actually learn about it, here, mini flight. If your aim is to actually learn about it, then there should be a serious book, a serious academic work that has been made about it. Right? Like, you can find academic works about the Irish potato famine. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. You can find out about the Bangladeshi famine. You can find out about the Holodomor. You can find out about all of that, right? You can find out about the Dust Bowl. You can find out about all of that. So there should be a credible intellectual coming out of an institution like Harvard, Princeton, Oxford, even places like Berkeley, right? There should be somebody who actually has created a work to base their career on, to produce it and show you this is what happened. This was the famine. Where is it? Yeah, if it can't be proven to be true, then what? Therefore what? Jesus, yeah. Is the information even actionable? I love, Cotton, you always come back to this, where it's just like, what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do about it? Let's say it's true. So, China's winning. Like, this is the thing that I think Cotton continuously brings up. That China is run by a party that's called the Communist Party of China, right? It's the Communist Party. The country has been run by the communists for a long, long time. They call themselves socialists with Chinese characteristics, reaching towards communism, right? This is what they say. And so what? Like, if you stand up and show me and prove to me without the shadow of a doubt, oh, the communists, they killed, there was a big... So what are you going to do about it? The communists are winning. Big time winning. China's winning. Like, if you want to pretend like this is actually a race, if you want to pretend like this is actually a conflict, instead of just a group of monkeys trying to figure out how to live successfully on a tiny little speck floating in space, but if you want to pretend like it's this warfare conflict, what the fuck are you going to do about it? And the answer is fucking nothing. Right? The answer is fucking nothing. We can't win economically. We gave them our manufacturing base. We literally took our factories and put them in China because we're super smart that way. So we can't beat them economically, right? We're certainly not going to beat them culturally. We're not going to beat them through trade. They've literally built rail throughout the continent, right? So the only thing we have left is war. But guess what? China has now invented quantum computing. And the Pentagon and the State Department are saying that we're very concerned that eventually Chinese computers are going to be so fast that they're going to be able to react 10 times faster than us. So while we're shooting missiles, they're going to be hacking those missiles. And we're not going to have the cybersecurity necessary to be able to actually fight a war against the Chinese. This is what they're saying. So even if you go on this gigantic journey, right? Okay, so just pivot. See, China has sweatshops. Good pivot, right? So yeah, people who just went through a war are willing to continue that struggle to improve the quality of life for their children. That's what that is, right? That the Chinese don't view going into sweatshops as like, they understand that it's a sacrifice, but so was a war, right? And the Chinese actually try to make things better over time, unlike us. So they're willing to sacrifice for their own children and their own families. They're willing to do that, unlike us. Yeah, and if you don't like it, they'll gladly put you in the dirt. So what? Like, this is the big thing. This is a big thing to always remember. This is a big thing to always remember. China's winning. Big time. And all of the bitching and all of the moaning and all of the nitpicking's not changing that. And if you want to be serious about interacting with China and learning about China, then you should do so in the same way that you would talk about someone like Magnus Carlsen if you were trying to learn chess. Like, China does not give a fuck about your opinion. It does not give a fuck. And it is winning, and it is winning with Marxist principles. Big time. And honestly, here's my other side of it. Even if it was true, compare it to the shit that happens in capitalism, and it's still better. That's my other favorite thing to say. Like, let's say that this famine was real and that it actually happened and it was a big catastrophe. So, What, you think that capitalism, like literally the only people to ever drop nuclear bombs on civilian targets, like the genocide of the First Nations people, slavery, the overthrow of nations all throughout South America, Africa, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan, the Civil War, for God's sakes, World War I, World War II. Like, you think that these are not catastrophes that come out of capitalism? So if you really want to get into this, right, if you really want to get into which one of these is better, so even if I accept, make it 100 million. Make it 100 million. It's still better. It's still better. So save yourself some time. Like, save yourself some time. Like, just accept that communism is a better system, even if you take all of the made-up bullshit and pretend as though it's real and heighten it to the worst it could possibly be and compare it to what capitalism actually does on the regular, it's still better. Like, I don't think the position of the capitalist is defensible. I don't think capitalists have an argument. Even if I cede all the territory, even if I cede everything, communism's still better. By a lot. It's not close. Cotton. Like, seriously, none of you are warriors. You can't even inconvenience your landlord. So you are nothing to China. Yeah, so fuck off to church. Yeah, you can't even inconvenience your landlord. Yeah, what a great line, Cotton. I'm stealing that, by the way, dude. That's my line now. That's my line. I own that line now. I seized the means of your production. That's a good line, dude. I like that. You can't even inconvenience your landlord. That's good. Now, capitalism has actual slave labor making your clothing today. Not even clothing, dude. Like, things like chocolate. Like, real like, bullshit stuff. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that argument, can you tell me a negative about communism? That's a good question, Minnie. I appreciate that question. The genuine criticism that I will say, Mocked, always a pleasure. So glad you're here. Pretty late in the game, dude. The critique that I will say about the Soviet Union, and I said it earlier, so I'll say it again, is that they failed to successfully build institutions to pass the baton from one generation to the next. What would be like a real, like, what would be the negative that I would have about communism? Like, it's a system that insists we should look at the world through material and historical analysis, which I mean, that's great. You're talking about actual modernized communism. Like, what's going on today? I think that the communists are making the right moves. Like it. Maybe I could nitpick them, but the truth is, dude, is like, here's the difference, right, between Westerners and me, is that I actually respect the Chinese. Like, I respect them as people. I respect that they know more about their system than I do. And so very often when I see them doing something that I don't necessarily agree with, I still tend to give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm learning from them. Like that, and that's really the truth. Like, and I don't think that it's wise to bring up criticisms about cultures you know very little or nothing about when they're winning. And that the much wiser thing to do is to accept that they're winning and start asking why. And how do we begin winning? How do we begin doing that? And do you know how they did it? They didn't allow wealth to mass under an oligarchy. They built infrastructure. They traded instead of bombed. They actually punished their billionaire class. How about that? Like when the 2008 crisis happened, right? When the 2008 crisis happened here, we literally bailed those guys out. We literally bailed them out. So what prevents them from doing it again? Fucking nothing. When a similar thing happened in China, they arrested and executed many of them. You think those guys are going to do that again? There will be a stage of development one day which succeeds communism. Yeah. It's hard for us to imagine. Ayo, I hope you're here to be beautiful, bud. Hey, I am seriously not agreeing with your TikTok live stream. I know the TikTok live stream is a disaster, dude. Like, it's just a stream of ridiculousness, frankly. The truth about capitalism in simple way, capitalism equals your and communism equals shared, not yours only. It's like feudalism, if you ask me. I don't think I understand your comment, dude. Straight up. Like, I appreciate that you're trying to communicate something, but I just don't think I understand your comment. It's off-putting that communism is so great but has never managed to be a genuine success. Minnie, by whose, what's success? Like, by whose litmus? Yours? Who cares? Like, who cares? Like, that's what's so funny, is that the people who are actually living in those countries consider those places to be very successful. Right? The Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Laosians, the Cambodians, the North Koreans, they consider their systems to be very successful. They don't care what you think. Like, your critiques of their system of that is working for them are irrelevant. Like, so by whose definition of success are we talking about what is a genuine success? Because if it's a capitalist's version of success, then yeah, it'll never be successful. They didn't allow the system to be parasticized and taken over by a financial system based on a fiat currency that collapses every 7 years. Yeah. Like, so a failure, I guess. So? Okay, so again, AO. Not everyone in China lives in some average houses. You pay like 2 times more for stuff. I don't know what actually. Yeah, of course you don't know. Like, that's the reality, dude. Like, stop actually making claims. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, I think the number one thing that I hope that we can all achieve at some point in this society is just the acceptance that we actually don't know what we're talking about. Like, that's the thing that's so breathtaking about Western society, is that it's not even that we're wrong. It's that we don't know what we're talking about. And yet we make these proclamations and these claims with such confidence, with such force and power, when we are illiterate and we don't know what we're talking about. That's what's absolutely astounding to me about what is happening in the Western discourse right now. And it's the confidence that really, really staggers me. That people will just make these statements as if they are true, bereft of any knowledge about what's going on in any country, including their own. Like, please just admit to yourself that you actually don't know what you're talking about. That you haven't actually read anything. That you haven't actually seen anything. And the things you have seen are likely CIA propaganda, designed to explicitly lie to you about this. Like, I'm really begging everybody, please stop coming in here pretending like you know something when you don't. It's unreal to me. Like, it's unreal to me Just the swaggering, cocksure confidence. And it's based on nothing. Worse than nothing. Lies. Well-funded lies. Oh. I think with that, I'm gonna call it a night. We've reached the end. Here we are. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to convince you you're just a little cog in their machine. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.